The Torah describes the incredible exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt. How literally in one day they packed up all of their belongings, they got together, and they traveled out of Egypt, a place where they had spent 210 years. And now they were going out into the wilderness. And we could imagine the scene. Thousands of Jewish people. There must have been anarchy and tons of packages that everybody had to take. Everybody was loading up their mules. It was a complete noise and a mess. And the Torah tells us an interesting point, that while all of this was happening, and while the Jewish people were leaving the land of Egypt, it tells us, "L'chol b'nei Yisrael lo yecheratz kelev l'shono." And not a single dog barked or threatened any of the Israelites when they were leaving Egypt. Usually, when there's a big panic going on, the dogs are barking and snarling and trying to bite people. But here, not a single dog barked. They did nothing. And dogs were very much a part of Egyptian society. In fact, one can see in hieroglyphics different dogs' heads. And in fact, there was even a god that the Egyptians worshipped, which was the dog god. What is the meaning of this? And why does the Torah have to tell us that not a single dog barked when the Jewish people left Egypt? And we have to look at a verse that appears in a few parashiyot times in Parshat Mishpatim, where the Torah says, "V'anshe kodesh tiyun li, you shall be to me a holy nation, u'basar basadeh trefa lo techelu, you may not eat meat of an animal that was ripped or torn in the field, lakelev tashlichon oto, you must throw it to the dog." So what is the Torah describing there? It's speaking about a person who has animals. He's a farmer. He has perhaps sheep. He has cattle. And the shepherd is there with the sheep and the cattle, and they're grazing, and suddenly a wild animal comes, a lion or perhaps a wolf, and attacks one of the animals and rips it. It doesn't die, but its wounds are very, very serious. And that's what's called a treifa, an animal that has been ripped and torn. Even if that animal is slaughtered according to the laws of kashrut, it's not kosher. One may not eat it. What must you do with the animal? So says the Torah, "Lakelev tashlichon oto," throw it to the dog. Why must you throw it to the dog? Can't you give it to somebody? Maybe you can give it to a non-Jew who doesn't have to keep the laws of kashrut. The Netziv gives a simple explanation, which is very beautiful and profound. He says what happens in normal circumstances is that there is a sheepdog. And of course, when a wolf comes into the flock and tries to snatch one of the sheepdog will try to defend the flock. Some cases, it's not successful. It may even become hurt in the process. And therefore, to say thank you, as it were, to your loyal sheepdog who tried to protect your flock, you should give the animal the carcass to eat. But Rashi tells us the more accepted explanation of this verse, based on the Talmud. Why is it that we take the treifa, we take this animal that has been ripped and give it to the dogs? And he says the reason why we do it is because God does not withhold the reward of any creature whatsoever, even a dumb animal. We find that in the times that the Jewish people left Egypt during the Exodus, not a single dog barked or harmed or upset any of the Jewish people. And Hashem says, you know what, that was an incredible thing that you dogs did. And therefore, I'm going to reward you for all time. That if you live with a Jewish family, you, Mr. Dog, who Zayda long time ago didn't bark at the Jewish people, I'm going to give you a treifa. This is the level that Hashem is prepared to go to reward people for the good that they do. Never mind people, in this case, it's an animal. We find another example, that when the Jewish people had to leave Egypt, they had a great deal of packages, as we mentioned. How were they going to schlep all of those packages? They had donkeys, many, many donkeys. And these donkeys helped the Jewish people to take all of their provisions out of the land of Egypt. So what does Hashem say? Hashem says, I'm going to reward the donkey. Even though it's a non-kosher animal, nevertheless, when a donkey gives birth to its first child, that child, in fact, has got some sanctity and has to be redeemed. That if the farmer wants to keep the donkey, he has to give to the Kohen a sheep in return. Again, it's the same principle. Hashem makes sure to reward every single creature for the good that it did, that it had done. The same thing applies over here. And therefore, I think the lesson to us is one that we should always appreciate and show gratitude to the good that was done to us. Even if the good that was done was not done for any type of ulterior motive. It was just done because that was the way in which the creature behaves. Nevertheless, we should show goodness. And we should remember the dogs that didn't bark at the Jewish people in Egypt, that for all time they will be rewarded by receiving the carcass. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.